What would you do if you were walking home at 2 a.m.? The village is dead silent, and right in the middle of a lonely dirt road, you see a calabash overflowing with pure glittering gold coins? Would you look around to see if anyone is watching, quickly pack the money into your pockets, and thank God for answering your prayers for a soft life? Or would you remember the terrifying warnings of your grandfathers, turn your back and run for your life? They say the devil does not come to you with a red pitchfork and horns. No, the devil comes to you carrying exactly what you have been begging for. Today's hot gist is not just a story, it is a serious warning. It is a tale that explains why, in our culture, the three-way crossroads is not just a place where paths meet. It is a dining table for the spirits. Welcome back to another tale of greed, dark spirits, and thunderous karma. Grab your popcorn, lock your doors, and whatever you do, do not pause this video. Let us gist. Our story takes us to the ancient, dusty village of Ama-Ukwu. In this village lived two brothers, Nnamdi, the elder, and Kelechi, the younger. Although they shared the same blood and lived in the same mud brick compound, their hearts were as different as day and night. Nnamdi was a man of tradition, respect, and hard work. He was a palm wine tapper. Every morning, before the sun even thought about waking up, Nnamdi was already climbing the tallest, most dangerous palm trees with nothing but a rope and his machete. He made very little money, barely enough to buy gari and a few pieces of dry fish. He was a sufferhead, but his conscience was clean. He never coveted another man's wealth, and he always poured a little palm wine on the earth to respect the ancestors. Then there was Kelechi. Kelechi was a young man poisoned by the modern obsession with fast wealth. He hated the smell of sweat. He hated the sight of the farm. Kelechi wanted to drive the biggest cars, wear the most expensive senator suits, and spray money at weddings. But Kelechi had no job. Instead, he spent his days roaming the village square, gambling with cowries, and trying to impress Uju. Ah, Uju. She was the most beautiful girl in Ama-Ukwu, with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that could make a man forget his own name. But Uju was deeply materialistic. She would not look twice at a man whose pockets were empty. Look at your brother. Uju would mock Kelechi, chewing on a piece of sugar cane. He is 30 years old, still climbing trees like a monkey. If you want to marry me, Kelechi, you better find money. I am not cut out to blow firewood smoke in a dirty kitchen. Kelechi would grit his teeth, his heart burning with shame and greed. Don't worry, Uju, he would promise, his eyes wild with desperation. Very soon, I will be the richest man in this village. Even the king will bow to me. He wanted wealth. He just didn't care where it came from. But Ama-Ukwu was not a village of wealth. In fact, that year, a terrible, mysterious plague had fallen upon the land. Crops were withering in the soil before they could be harvested. Healthy young men were dropping dead in their sleep. Women were weeping, and a dark cloud of poverty and sickness hung over every single home. The village elders were terrified. They called upon Ezemo, the oldest and most powerful chief priest in the region. Ezemo was a man who lived half in the world of the living and half in the world of the spirits. He threw his cowrie shells on the dusty earth, read the signs, and shook his head gravely. The land is polluted, the chief priest declared, his voice sounding like dry leaves crushing on the foot. The spirits of poverty, sickness, and sudden death have built a home in Ama-Ukwu. To save the village, we must gather all the curses of this land and offer them to the gods of the crossroads. The elders agreed. They brought out the village's treasury, hundreds of pure, heavy gold coins and precious beads. That midnight, in a terrifying secret ritual, Izimor chanted incantations that made the trees shake. He symbolically washed the sickness and poverty of the entire village off the people and bound all that dark, heavy curse directly into the gold. He placed the cursed wealth inside a massive blackened calabash, tied it with red and black cloths, and carried it into the dead of night. He placed it exactly at the center of the dreaded three-way crossroads, the boundary between the human world and the spirit world. The next morning, the town crier ran through the village, striking his metal gong frantically. Gibo, gibo, gibo. People of Ama-Ukwu, hear me and hear me well. The crier shouted. The curse of the village has been laid at the great crossroads. From today, nobody must walk past that junction after midnight. And if you see a calabash of gold, close your eyes and run. Whoever touches that money will inherit the plague, the poverty, and the death of the entire village. You have been warned. Nnamdi heard the warning, bowed his head, and prayed for protection. But when Kelechi heard the words calabash of gold, a wicked, greedy smile spread across his face. To a greedy man, a warning sounds like an invitation. That night, at exactly 2 a.m., when even the witches were asleep, Kelechi silently slipped out of his bed. Nnamdi was fast asleep, exhausted from climbing palm trees. Kelechi wrapped a dark cloth around his face and crept toward the outskirts of the village. The journey to the great crossroads was terrifying. The air grew unnaturally cold. The stray dogs in the village, which usually barked at everything, were whining and hiding under bushes. The wind howled through the bamboo trees, sounding almost like human voices crying out, "Go back, go back." But Kelechi's mind was flashing with images of Uju, of mansions, of expensive clothes. Greed had made him deaf to the spirits. He finally reached the crossroads. There, sitting directly in the center of the dirt path, illuminated by the pale light of the moon, was the massive blackened calabash. The red and black cloths fluttered in the wind. Inside, the gold coins glittered so brightly they almost seemed to glow. Kelechi's hands trembled, not from fear, but from excitement. He didn't see the cause. He only saw his ticket to the soft life. He rushed forward, grabbed the heavy calabash, and emptied the cursed gold directly into his large sack. As soon as the last coin left the calabash, a sudden, violent gust of wind knocked him to his knees, and a horrifying, booming laugh echoed from the dark trees. But Kelechi didn't care. He hugged the sack of gold to his chest and ran all the way home. The transformation of Kelechi was overnight, and it shocked the entire village. Within a week, Kelechi left his brother's mud brick house. He bought the largest piece of land in Ama-Ukwu and hired workers to build a massive modern mansion. He bought pure silk clothes, heavy gold chains, and threw massive parties where he would pour expensive imported wine on the floor just to show he could. Uju, the materialistic beauty, immediately packed her bags and moved into Kelechi's new mansion. She wore coral beads on her neck and walked around the village like a queen, laughing at the other girls. When Nnamdi, his older brother, came to the mansion to warn him, Kelechi humiliated him. "Kelechi," Nnamdi pleaded, looking at the unnatural cold wealth surrounding them. "Where did you get this money? Sudden wealth without a root is a trap. Please, if you have done something evil, confess before it is too late." Kelechi laughed, sipping from a crystal cup. Look at my poor, pathetic brother, still smelling of palm wine and poverty. You are just jealous that my God has finally answered me while you are still suffering. Guards, throw this beggar out of my compound. Nnamdi wept as he was pushed out of his brother's gates. He knew deep in his spirit that Kelechi had crossed a line of no return. But my people, the devil does not give gifts. He only gives loans with terrible interest rates. The horror began exactly 1 month after Kelechi took the money. It started at night. Kelechi woke up feeling a strange freezing cold in his lavish bedroom. He reached into his drawer to count his beautiful gold coins, a greedy habit he had developed. But when he opened the drawer, he screamed. The gold coins were not gold anymore. In the dark, the coins had transformed into hundreds of fat, white, riding maggots and giant black scorpions crawling over each other. Kelechi slammed the drawer shut, hyperventilating. But when he opened it again in the morning light, they were just normal gold coins. He convinced himself it was just a bad dream. It wasn't a dream, it was the curse waking up. A few days later, Kelechi noticed a small, black, foul-smelling spot on his left arm. He ignored it, but by the next morning, the spot had grown into a massive, rotting sore. The curse of the village, the sickness, the plague he had stolen, was beginning to manifest in his physical body. Every time Kelechi spent a single cursed coin, a new piece of his flesh began to rot. His skin turned ashen and grey. His hair fell out in clumps. The smell coming from his body was so horrific, so much like a decaying corpse, that his servants began to run away from the mansion. And then came the terrifying visitor. Every night, exactly at 2 a.m., Kelechi would wake up paralyzed in his bed. Standing in the corner of his dark room was a towering, unnatural shadow. The entity had no face, but its feet were facing backward. The spirit of the Crossroads had come to collect its rent. You took our pain, the entity would whisper in a voice that sounded like grinding stones. Now you will bear it alone. Kelechi was in agonizing pain. His wealth had become his prison. He begged Uju to stay and help him clean his rotting sores. But Uju, the girl who loved the soft life, took one look at Kelechi's decaying face, packed all the jewelry he had bought her, and fled the mansion in the middle of the night without looking back. Desperate, crying, and smelling of death, Kelechi gathered the remaining gold coins into a sack. He dragged his rotting, agonizing body through the village, crawling through the dirt, all the way to the shrine of Ezemwo, the chief priest. "Please," Kelechi wailed, coughing up black blood at the feet of the priest. "Take it back. I am the one who stole the calabash from the Crossroads. Please, tell the spirit I am returning their money. I don't want to be rich anymore." The chief priest looked down at Kelechi with eyes full of pity and absolute terror. "You fool," the priest whispered. "You cannot return what you have already consumed. You have spent the cursed gold to build your house, to buy your clothes. The curse is no longer in the coins. The curse is in your blood." Kelechi screamed, a sound so full of regret and agony that it echoed across the entire village. "To save your life from immediate death," the priest commanded, "you must surrender everything. Your mansion, your clothes, your pride. You must drag yourself to the village square in broad daylight. Confess your greed to the people, and for the rest of your natural life, you will sweep the dirt of the great crossroads every night to warn others not to make your mistake." And so, the man who wanted to be a king became the lowest beggar in Ama-Ukwu. Kelechi's mansion was burned to the ground by the elders to cleanse the land. His fancy clothes were turned to ash. He lost his mind completely. If you go to the village of Ama-Ukwu today, you will see him, a rotting, mad beggar in torn rags, clutching a broom, sweeping the dusty three-way junction every single night, weeping and muttering to the shadows. But what about Nnamdi, the hardworking, honest brother? The universe honors those who keep their hands clean. One morning, while digging behind his humble mud brick house to plant some yams, Nnamdi's shovel hit a rock. Water began to gush out. But it wasn't just any water. Nnamdi had discovered a massive, pure, natural freshwater spring right on his property. In a region that suffered from dry seasons, clean water was more valuable than gold. People traveled from neighboring towns to buy Nnamdi's pure water. Companies eventually came and paid him millions to build a well on his land. Nnamdi became incredibly wealthy, but his wealth brought no sickness, no maggots, and no backward-footed spirits. It brought him a peaceful, beautiful wife, healthy children, and a long, joyful life. And that, my people, is why our elders warn us. The food that is free is the one that is used to bait the trap. Kelechi thought he was outsmarting the spirits to get rich quick, but he ended up buying his own destruction. But I have a very serious question for you all. Let us be completely honest. If you were deep in debt, your family was starving, and you found a massive bag of untraceable dollars sitting at a lonely crossroads at midnight, knowing the superstitions of our culture, would you leave it there out of fear, or would you pray over it, bind the spirits, and take the money to change your life? Oh yes, I know some of you are already calculating how you would use Holy Ghost fire on the curse. Drop your honest truth in the comment section down below. Let us gist. What would you have done? If you love this terrifying hot gist, do me a huge favor. Smash that subscribe button, like this video, and share it with someone who is always looking for a dangerous shortcut to wealth. We drop epic banger stories like this every single week on Prosper Storytime. Until next time, stay safe, keep your hands clean, and remember, never let arrogance become your shadow.